20-win season quite a few times. So, Chris, thanks for joining us. Let's welcome to WSBF FM Clemson.
How are you?
Great. How about you? Thanks for joining us before your trip to Ole Miss and Oxford. And just talk a little bit about the Florida Gators and the year that they've had, being number 2 in the country, and what Billy Donovan's done. He's done it once again. So.
Well, I mean, I think it's a story that's kind of been talked about quite a bit over the course of the last 2 months. Their last loss, I believe, was December the 2nd. And it's kind of like after, they got their team back. They had a couple suspensions early on in the season. And it's a team, obviously, that's led by 4 seniors. And it's one thing to have 4 seniors on a team. It's another to have 4 really good ones. And Florida has that. And these are guys that came in early, obviously, as freshmen. 2 of them were role players. The other two didn't play very much, but they stayed the course, and they've been through a lot together over the previous 3 seasons, namely 3 straight Elite Eights, and now they got a chance to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament if they take care of some business down the stretch. They got a 3-game lead with 5 to play in the SEC, but they got a tough game at Ole Miss on Saturday. It starts at 11 o'clock in the morning local time there, so that's a little strange, but this team knows how to go about its business and is used to dealing with various circumstances. They like to say there's really nothing they haven't seen over the course of their career. So they did play an 11 o'clock game a couple years ago at Tennessee and lost. So they know how, they'll go about their business the way they always have in normally a professional way.
Yeah, you talked about the importance of having 4 seniors on that team, but people forget Florida also recruited one of the top freshmen in the nation, Chris Walker, who was suspended earlier in the season. Why was Walker suspended, and now that he's back, what kind of impact is he making on the court?
Well, he wasn't suspended. He wasn't eligible. He wasn't academically eligible for the first semester, and so he had to rally there to get eligible to get enrolled in school once the second semester began, and then he had to get clearance through the NCAA relative to his AAU experience and what have you. But his impact has been absolutely minimal. I mean, he played 1 minute the other night in their last game. I think he's played 19 minutes in 4 games. It might be 5 games by now. And he joined the team on December 14th and spent really 6 weeks just getting caught up in the intricacies of both the offense and the defense. He's still not there yet, but what they really need, what would really suit Chris Walker best is if Florida can get in a game where it's not nip and tuck the whole way, and they can kind of get him in there and let him kind of get his feet wet, dip his toe into the SEC waters, and that really hadn't been the case. You can't put him in right now because there's a lot of times where he's not necessarily going to know where he's supposed to be, but over the course of the next 3 weeks, they're hoping that some more opportunities bear themselves out where he can play more.
Right, and Chris, talk a little bit about the Auburn game Wednesday night. Probably it was a lot more challenging than the Gators and Billy Donovan, but talk about Florida battling through some adversity and finding a way to win in the last couple minutes there.
Well, they've done that all year, and what was different about it was here. Florida had won 29 in a row, and certainly Auburn had them on the ropes. They were terrific. Auburn hit a bunch of 3-point shots. It's something that Florida has struggled with sometimes defending the 3-point line. Auburn hit some really big ones. They had a point guard that went 5 for 7 from out there. That I think he had 17 points. He'd only been averaging 9 a game. But again, plays down the stretch, and Tony Barbee, the Auburn coach, spoke after the game and said that's why Florida won the game, because they're a championship team that doesn't hurt itself at the end of the game. And sure enough, Auburn had a chance to maybe win the game on the last possession and threw the ball out of bounds on an inbound play. And Florida got the ball, shot free throws, closed the game out. Last year they were 0-6 in games decided by single digit games. This year they're 11-2 in those games. So again, that goes back to experience, and Florida's won out in the end the other night too.
Yeah, Chris, you talked about Auburn being able to hit those 3-pointers, and speaking of 3-pointers, head down to Ole Miss to play against Marshall Henderson, and who scored 25 in the regular season and 21 in the SEC final versus Florida last year. What are the Gators hoping to do to contain Marshall Henderson, who seemingly has a green light from anywhere on the court?
He does have a green light from anywhere on the court, and when they I remember last year when they were getting ready for him, they just had one of their scout team guards just jacking it up from wherever because that's what he does, and he makes them. You mentioned the 21 points in the SEC tournament final. 18 of them were in the second half. He just got, and I think he had 2 4-point plays. So yeah, I mean he's a concern. The thing about Ole Miss this year, they don't have their big rugged front court guys that they had last year that really carried them, and they were the reason that really made Marshall Henderson more dangerous. I think you can lock in on him a little bit more, but it's not just him. I mean, they average eight 3-point shots as a team a game, which is best in the SEC. Marshall Henderson makes half those. He's around 4 3-pointers a game, but again, he's capable of going and getting 30 any night. And obviously, a team like Florida, which has given up some 3 points lately, they're going to put an X on him and an X on that element of what the Rebels do and see what they can do about it. But, if they're hitting shots, they're hitting shots. Auburn was doing it the other night. And, sometimes the other guys play, sometimes the other coaches coach, sometimes that's how it works out.
Right, and you talk. Florida had that big win over Kentucky last weekend, and they have one more game versus Kentucky this year in Gainesville. So what are the chances that Kentucky might be able to pull an upset there?
I mean, they're the most talented team in the league. They could certainly come into Florida and beat them. You said they play them once more. They may play them twice more, and they may play another time in the SEC tournament, which would be like a home game given the way the Kentucky fans travel. But, again, if Kentucky coming into the O-Dome is going to be a special game. It's going to be senior day for those 4 guys. They're not going to want to go out as losers on their home court, on their final game on their home floor. They'll be jacked up for that game. I'm sure Kentucky will be. They'll be looking to make a statement, looking to jump up maybe a couple lines in seeding just by winning a game like that. They're certainly capable of it, but that's a game that's, I believe, 5 games away, and Florida has to worry about Ole Miss, and they got to go to Vanderbilt, and they've certainly had struggles up there in Nashville before. They got LSU, which the team's got 2 McDonald's All-Americans on it. So there's plenty of things to keep their mind occupied between now and March 8 when they play when they finish the regular season against Kentucky.
Right, and Chris, looking at the SEC as a whole, people like Dick Vitale said that he thinks only 2 teams will get in. How many do you see get in the NCAA tournament from the SEC?
I mean, he said that, and I don't think there's a whole lot of room to argue with the guy. I mean, none of the third teams are distinguishing themselves. Whether it's Tennessee, whether it's Missouri, whether it's Ole Miss has lost 3 straight. I mean, they have their chances sitting right there, but they're not capitalizing on them. They're losing games they shouldn't lose. The league is hurting itself, whereas Florida and Kentucky are taking advantage of it by marching through and again, that's a thing the Gators, people point to the Gators, say, well, they haven't been challenged this year, but, they challenge themselves every day in practice. They play really hard against each other in practice, and that's how Billy Donovan kind of keeps them on edge. But if these, middling SEC teams keep beating up on each other, and you have a bunch of, going to have a bunch of 9-9 teams or 10-8 teams when it's all said and done, no, they're not going to get a third team in. So somebody has to step up, or somebody has to make some noise and do some damage in the conference tournament in Atlanta in a few weeks.
Yeah, you talked about Florida not being challenged, but I'm looking at the schedule. They had a run in December where they played number 12 Connecticut, number 13 Kansas, number 15 Memphis all in a row. They also played Wisconsin and, like you said, Kentucky, a big test. So they have been tested a little bit, and so it's impressive that Billy Donovan has been able to put together another 20-win season. This is 16 in a row, and including the back-to-back titles in 2006 and 2007. So where do you think Billy Donovan falls on a list of all-time great coaches?
Oh my! Well, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's only 47 or 48 years old right now. So I think a lot of people still look at him and see Billy the Kid from the 1987 Providence team, which for you guys is probably just a few highlights you might see on TV every now and then. But I remember that run that he had, and he was one of the best players in college basketball then. So he's not only a great Hall of Fame coach, he was one of the great players in Big East Conference history when that league was alive and well. So he'll have his time. I'm not saying that he won't, venture off into the NBA one day. There's still plenty of time for him to do that. I think that's something that maybe still might be in the back of his mind. Obviously, he tried to do that once and had second thoughts and came back. But in terms of where he stands right now and among the nation's coaches, he's at the very top, I would think. I mean, you're talking Krzyzewski, you're talking Boeheim, you're talking Tom Izzo, you're talking Roy Williams, and you're talking Billy Donovan. And if I left somebody out, I apologize, but those are the 5 names that come to my mind right away. And he certainly can stand right there with all of them. He's got 2 national championships and, like you said, all those 21 seasons in a row. And he basically created something out of nothing at the University of Florida, because in the 58 years before he got here, the team had been to the NCAA tournament. I believe the number was 5 times. And obviously he's been in his 18 seasons. He's looking to go to his 14th time this year.
And Chris, before we let you get out of here and head to Oxford, do you think Florida is pretty much locked up a number 1 seed, and who do you think the other number 1 seeds will be in the tournament this year? And thanks for joining us again, and we'll get you back on sometime in the near future, but safe travels to Oxford.
All right, thanks. Yes, I do think there'll be a number 1 seed, provided they don't totally collapse or have, God forbid, some kind of injury going down the line. You don't want to see that from anybody. But if you look around, I mean, you obviously think Syracuse is going to be in the running for one of those. I wouldn't be surprised to see Michigan State maybe make a run and make some noise late. I know they got a few losses in the Big Ten, but, the selection committee does take into account injuries and what have you. And I think, Wichita State is going to be right there. And, some of the usual suspects that you guys, I'm sure, talk about every day up at the top of the polls are going to be right there to challenge for those number 1 seeds. Thank you guys for having me on.
All right, thank you, Chris. And that's Chris Harry from GatorsZone.com.